So I'm going to use this book for reference here. So this is the Beowulf manuscripts, if that would just, focus. So this contains, obviously this is not the manuscript. This was translated and edited by R.D. Falk. But this is all of the entire manuscript, actually translated into English from Latin and whatnot. And there we are. We're going to get into this now. This is a Dumbarton Oaks Medieval Library Beowulf manuscript, edited and translated by R.D. Falk. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, awesome. If you're not, then who cares? Bottle of whiskey acting as my mic stand because I don't have an expensive mic. That's it. So we're going to start with me reading. So let me just bring up this first page. Oh, there we are, look. Where are we? We're here. The Monster Book. The Monster Book. That's what they call it. The Monster Book of the Noel Codex, an old manuscript full of creature stories and what they tell us about people who wrote them down. Anyway, the dog-headed saint. Let's just move that out of the way so, just in case you didn't see that. There's a really old book in the British Library that smells like it was on fire, because it was. The edges are burned and crispy. Back in 1731, a building called Ashburnham House caught fire. The irony. And this book got torched. If you want to know about that, watch my last video. But the book was already ancient by then. Someone or two had written it between 975 and 1025, roughly 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago. And one, minimum, 1,050 years ago. They used animal skin called vellum, and they wrote down on bird feather quills. Oh, what survives that fire was one of the most amazing documents once it was restored from medieval England. Once it was restored from medieval England. Did I write that? There was 5 different texts inside, and every single one is about monsters. And we'll get to that at some point in this. So here we are. Meet the dog-headed saint. The first story is about Saint Christopher. You might know him as the friendly giant who helped a little kid cross a river. But this version is a little different. This Christopher has a dog's head, tusks like a boar, golden hair, and can't even speak a human language at first. Basically, he's a monster. A Cynocephalus. If I've pronounced that wrong, correct me. I do believe the Cynocephalus get mentioned in one of the later books. Actually, the next book. But there's a twist. God sends an angel to help him. Suddenly, Christopher can understand and speak. He becomes a powerful tool for God. He does crazy things like multiply bread to feed crowds, walk out of fire unharmed, and make arrows freeze in midair, and reverse course and hit the king who shot them. What does this story get at? What is the story getting at? Looks can be deceiving. The monster saint is actually good, and the civilized king is actually the real monster, throwing tantrums when people question him. Does that sound familiar to any of you? All the people being called monsters. Maybe they're not monsters. The next book is this one. Let's get up as high as we can before I show the next one. Anyway, so list of weird creatures. Next up is the Wonders of the East. Instead of telling a story, this text just lists bizarre creatures that people in the Middle East, in the Middle Ages, believed existed. I just read the first one, sorry. Some highlights. The fire chickens. I guess they cook themselves. Looks like a normal hen, but if you touch it, you burst into flames instantly. The 8-foot creature with 2 heads that burns anyone who tries to grab them. Don't touch these animals. It's just giant ants the size of dogs that dig up gold. People would trick them using camels to steal the gold. Why is pepper black? Because it was harvested. It was harvested by burning the ground to scare away giant snakes. The pepper got scorched. I mean, the stories people make up to, to account for things. And then there was the weird human-like races. People 6 foot tall with beards down to their knees who ate raw fish. Scandinavians. Giants 15 feet tall with ears so big they used one to sleep on and the other as a blanket. Headless people with eyes and mouths in their chest. The creepiest one is the Nestra. They speak every human language. They trick travellers by naming their family members to gain trust. That would be kind of creepy though, right? You just met someone you never met and they could name all your family members. Then they would eat the traveller. After that, they would sit down and cry over the severed head. Who comes up with this shit? The crying is what makes them truly terrifying. It's not just hunger, it's manipulation. And then we have... Oh, we leave Beowulf there because it is the next one afterwards, but we're not going to get into Beowulf because that's what this whole fucking channel has been like for the last year. Alexander the Great meets a talking tree. Between Monster List and Beowulf sits a text about Alexander the Great. This isn't the smart political Alexander from history class. This is the superhero version, fighting impossible creatures and losing control. His army gets attacked by 2-headed snakes, giant scorpions, and a massive monster that swallows men whole. There's fire falling from the sky, hail. Alexander thinks God is angry with him. This would make a cool movie. Just can we wait until we're out of the woke age of Hollywood before we do that, please? Then he finds the trees of the sun and moon. You got to wonder, because Beowulf, Tolkien was a Beowulf scholar, and so we can assume that he read, the whole manuscript. Given us, I guess he would have had access to it, right? So I wonder if he got the those 2 trees from the Silmarillion from this. These trees can talk. One speaks Indian, the other Greek. They tell Alexander a prophecy. He'll conquer the world but never return home. He'll die from poison by someone he trusts. He's not allowed to ask who. That's a downer. The conqueror hits his limit, not in battle but in destiny. Old English people called this weird, which is like fate. If you look up in the old English dictionary, I've got one up there, but weird is written down as kind of like fate. But this is, even though it kind of meant fate, this is the word which is the early form of the word weird now. But that's not what it meant back then. Weird. Fate doesn't care about how many battles you've won. Right. That's the first 3. So all 3 of them, in terms of Beowulf, were written by Scribe A, who wrote the first half, about 1,939.5 lines of the Beowulf manuscript. Then Scribe B took over, wrote Beowulf and Judith. Now, Judith is biblical. Excuse me again. Judith is biblical, and we'll get to that just now. Judith cuts off a general's head. The last story is about Judith from the Bible. I told you. But the Anglo-Saxon poet turned her into a total badass. Now, this is boss babes more than 1,000 years ago, so they existed that far long ago. But why has no one turned this into a film that I'm aware of? Maybe it has, and I just haven't seen it. Or maybe Hollywood just can't read. It's the 4th night. Halifanes, the Assyrian general, is drunk. He's shit-faced drunk. Bellowing, laughing, disturbing everyone. His own soldiers are forced to drink until they pass out. Holofernes wants to assault Judith, but he's too drunk and passes out before he can touch her. God protects her. It is biblical after all. What does Judith do? She takes his own sword. She prays for strength and then grabs him by the hair and cuts his head off, not once but twice. The first blow takes out half his neck. The second removes his head, so he doesn't cut his head off twice. She cuts it off once. She takes her 2 strikes. The poet describes his soul going to hell, covered in worms, suffering forever. When the Assyrian guards finally check out their boss, they find a headless body. They panic. The whole army flees. The Hebrew people chase them down and win. The poet essentially turns a biblical widow into a Viking warrior queen. Judith becomes a shield maiden. I mean, is this in the Bible? And if it is in the Bible, is that what happens in the Bible? Or are they embellishing like they did with everything else in this fucking thing? Except Beowulf, that was true. Judith becomes a shield maiden. The language is in the same kind used for Beowulf. Why have I written bother? Both were written... For fuck's sake, okay. I can't not correct this because it's really doing my brain in. Both were written by the second scribe, so Beowulf and Judith are both written by scribe. Well, half of Beowulf was written by scribe B. The message: sometimes the monster isn't the creature, sometimes the ruler who thinks he can do whatever he wants. And I'm just going to scroll up so you can see what it says underneath. Sound familiar? Part 2. It's amazing how we knew this stuff thousands of years ago and we're still falling for it now. Why should we care? Because we should always read history, because history is our best kind of like interpreter of what the future will hold. What does it mean that someone put 5 stories together in one book? We don't know for sure. Maybe it was planned. Maybe it was just convenient. Together, these texts cover 4 types, don't know why I wrote 5, 4 types of encounters with monsters. The monster with the good soul, St. Christopher. The monster as the other, sometimes completely different. One is of the Eastern Beowulf, the monster that stops human ambition. Alexander and Beowulf, because Grendel stops Hrothgar doing his thing. And the monster who needs to be killed, Judith, and again Beowulf, because Grendel's mother and the dragon. Here's the big question the book keeps asking. What makes someone a monster? The answer is brutal. It's almost never about how someone looks. It's about what they do. The fire destroyed part of the book. Some pages are gone, but what survived is more than enough. It shows us what people 1,000 years ago were afraid of and fascinated by. These old stories about monsters, they're never really about monsters. And I have to wonder if we'll have some monster stories to tell of recent times. Allegory. The BBC are already on that, by the way. The BBC are on that. Come and get over there.